boys and girls in estate agency land, they don't come much bigger when it comes to names than Iain White, guru to the industry, ex-Leaders Romans director. What you don't know about this estate agency industry ain't worth knowing, Iain. Thank you for joining me today on the WatkinSofa. The question I would like to ask you is, we're filming this in April 2022. What is the state of the estate agency industry in 2022 and beyond? Talk to me.
What is this? Well, first of all, thank you for having me on your sofa again. I know I've been a couple of times, so feeling privileged. What is the state of the estate agency industry? I think the honest answer to that, Chris, is that it's at one another's throats. And as a result of that, it has no uniformity. You know, we're arguing whether it's employed, self-employed, low fee model, high fee model, pay up front, not up front. You know, there's so many...
Oh, the list goes on.
Well, it's just conflict. I mean, even conflict about whether you should wear a suit or a hoodie. I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. The industry is not in any way uniform.
Does it need to be?
Well, does it need to be? No, because it functions. But does it need to be in order to improve standards? Yes, I believe so. Does it need to be in order to be able to charge the right amount? Yes, because at the moment an instruction comes into the market and the 10 or so agents that might be up for that instruction will fight each other, typically on fee, if we're honest, which then drives wages down, which then drives standards down, which then drives the public perception down. So in reality, the whole thing is, and if you go to any other country in the world, as you know, I travel around and do my work in more than just the UK, you know, they do work together for the good of the industry, whereas here we're totally isolated from one another.
I've had some Australian real estate agents on the sofa, and they say collaboration is king. When they go to conferences, everyone leaves their proverbial swords at the door, and they get on with each other. Whilst in a state agency, you know, I always say people hate Rightmove, but they hate their competitors even more. And it's a thrill. It's that they've got to get the listing at all cost.
Yes, which is normally a lower fee. The tactical strategy for most estate agents is just to simply match or beat the other guy's fee. Now, there's no skill or cleverness around that particular approach. I don't believe the consumer wants the lower fee. I think the consumer wants something a little bit more substantial in terms of a strategy. But agents give pretty much the same strategy. Therefore, it's always going to come down to fee.
Well, it's interesting you say about the fee, but Peter Knight from the Property Academy and the Best Estate Agent Guide did their home moving survey, and they interviewed 10, 20,000 people each year, and only 17% of people said the fee was their most important thing.
I mean, Peter's been doing that research now for what, 5, 6, 7, maybe, I can't remember, Peter will tell
15,
you.
15, 16 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to argue with the amount of data that he's managed to put together. But estate agents will just poo-poo that as being bunkum, that it's not the case. The consumer is driven by fee. The only people in this place that are driven by fee is the lister or the business owner. The consumer definitely isn't driven by fee. I would say about 20% of people are driven by fee.
Well, 17, it's split in hairs.
Yeah, there has been research to suggest that 1 in 5 British consumers will buy on a price point alone, but that means that 4 out of 5 won't. So why do we appeal to the 1 in 5 that does want a low fee point? Why don't we all try and attract the 4 in 5? Or accept that we're a low fee point and we're going after those people? And accept that that's not wrong as well. You know, what the guy that wants to be a low fee and go after those people with a service that's transparent and perhaps not as full detail as a full fee, full service agent. Why argue about which end? Just do what you do very well, but uniform for the good of the agency, for the good of the industry, sorry, not the agency, for the good of the entire perception of how we do things.
But people don't care about anyone else, people only care about themselves.
Yes, but I think by collaborating, you used the word in Australia. I spent a lot of time in Australia, got a lot of time for the Australians and their psychology, not just in estate agency actually, but just as a people, but estate agency in particular, because it's obviously an industry that's close to my heart and that I know. But they will collaborate, but it is self-gain. If we were all charging 2%, the commission value to everybody would be higher. Because we're all charging 1%, or less in some cases, the value of the market has shrunk for the estate agents. Therefore, wages have shrunk. Therefore, the ability to attract the best people around has shrunk.
I mean, a lot of people have blamed the likes of your Purple Bricks and the online models for this degradation in fees. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I understand the comment, but no, I don't think it's a fair comment. I think that I would rebuke that by saying it was your response to the Purple Bricks offering that has driven fees down. You weren't strong enough to say, right, they're offering a low-cost, upfront, cheap offering, partly because the industry was so dismantled in the fact that there wasn't this collaboration. Nobody ever really put out a voice. I didn't see anybody from any authoritative body or anybody that supposedly champions the industry putting forward a cohesive, well thought through campaign to talk about why commissary wasn't really that honest. Because that's not what we did. What we did is we bitched about Purple Bricks.
And we bitched in public as well, didn't we?
Bitched in public, which I think only enhanced their brand awareness. But also, at the same time as bitching, actually dropped our fee to combat them. Nobody thought about specialising, or nobody thought about adding some value to their service or differentiating from either Purple Bricks or the next guy. If Purple Bricks or anyone else wants to charge up front for a listing, that's their choice. That's their business model. Why try and prove their model to be wrong? Why not? Surely you're better off to prove your model to be correct.
Do you think one of the issues is, I mean, if memory serves me well, the Connells Group and LSL have probably between them got 7 or 8% combined market share. Then you've got the other 20 or so larger chains, one of which is obviously the old Romans groups and your Moves and other groups like Chestertons and Savills. They take about 30% of the market. So the 25 biggest brands. Do you think because most estate agents are one man, one woman bands, that's an issue with regard to the fact is that they're scrabbling around for the fee?
Look, I think the structure within the market pushes fees down. I think everybody is competing and fighting for that instruction. I mean, typically the bigger agents that you've talked about, love or hate them, and you can argue about their service standards and their structures and whether they're the right people to work for. Their fees are actually typically higher. The individual person, it's easy for them to justify, oh, well, it's 5,000 anyway, or it's 3,000 anyway. It'll pay my mortgage, it'll pay my bill. And that drives fees down. I mean, the self-employed scenario is driving fees down significantly in the industry. They typically. I mean, there are some very, very good exceptions. You know them, I know who they are. But if you took, every single listing across the self-employed space and compared it to every single listing across the employed base, I would bet my bottom dollar that the fee in the self-employed market would be lower, percentage terms, than the employed. But of course, they don't have the costs. So what's wrong with that model?
Let's just bring it back to the number of estate agents. Do you think there are too many estate agents in the UK? I mean, to give you some idea, 2006 there was 9,500 estate agents. Today there's 23,000.
I don't think there are enough great estate agents. I don't, whether we've got, either end of those two numbers is not relevant. It's the quality of the numbers that I think is the relevant thing. And because wages have been driven down and down and down, because fees have gone down and down and down, and with the exception of the last 2 years where we've had this surreal boom marketplace because of COVID, which nobody could have anticipated, it's been a fairly low to average paid job. Well, if you have a low to average paid job, you will get low to average paid people. If you have a high to elite level pay, then you'll get high to elite level people.
Do you think the quality of people that we are bringing into the industry today compared to 20 years ago is much worse?
100% worse. I mean, yeah, totally. And the availability of that talent is well, I don't know, the population hasn't shrunk particularly, so the availability of the talent hasn't shrunk, but the industry doesn't attract what it used to attract.
I mean, we're going to do a separate video on recruiting staff and the problems, but you're a partner in Crux Careers, so you're obviously seeing, you're advertising jobs. I mean, are salaries any better? Salaries are much worse, are they?
The earnings, once you've added up your commission and your car and whatever, if you add up the entire package, I don't have the ability of doing the looking at the retrospective. You have this great way of looking at inflation and adding it on and saying, well, actually, it looks like it's cheap. So I haven't put it through that model. So I'm yet to be proved right or wrong. But my feeling is that the average estate agent earns less retrospectively now than they did 20 years ago. I'm obviously aware of what I was earning when I was at the peak of my actual career, if you like, when I was doing estate agency day to day. And I don't believe people earn anything like that sort of money these days.
So it's kind of chicken and the egg. You've got staff who are not colleagues, you don't have to call them staff anymore, who are not being paid as much, so they're not being attracted in. What has to come first? Get better staff, but then you need higher fees. What is it a case of just saying, right, we're charging 1.5% now and stuff?
Well, I think each business owner has to decide what type of business they want. If they want cheap staff, there is no point in them trying to pretend that they're going to deliver an elite service, because the two can't happen. If they want to be a cheap agent and they want to be fees as to be part of their mantra, their DNA, their attraction, I personally don't have a problem with that. That's a business decision. What I do have a problem with is if they then misrepresent what they're offering as a result. Be clear with what you're offering. Be honest and be truthful, and there'll be 1 in 4 or 17%, based on Peter Knight's research, that will choose your agency. That's fine. But that means that there are 4 out of 5 that are repelled by your fee strategy. Well, someone else can go and pick up and specialise in that particular.
But then I'll lose, there's too much competition. I need all the listings I can get just to break even.
Well, do you need all the listings? What you need is enough to be able to make a living. I firmly believe that I have made more money as an estate agent and advising estate agents since by knowing when not to take the instruction than I ever did by going after every single possible fee or every single possible earning opportunity. And every business owner I know and work with who is producing what I would call top block performance all have a very rigid fee policy, which is much, much higher than the average.
Now, you are paid by estate agents to parachute into their business and look at their businesses. What do you think are the biggest issues that are quite easily sorted out? Because everyone can't A, afford you, or B, there's only one of you. I mean, what are the most underlying issues that normally have to be sorted out?
Leadership. I would say leadership is a big issue, particularly with the bigger firms, where the owners of the business are now stretched or remote from the shop floor. Generally speaking, training is around, listing or getting a fee or closing a deal. It's never about leadership, and it's a very different strategy. It's a very different skill set to be a great lister than it is to be someone who can command the respect of a team. And where that team leader may have been a brilliant estate agent, they often don't make very good leaders or have never been given any support, technique, knowledge, training to become a good leader.
Why is the estate agent, I mean, again, excluding the likes of your Romans and your Countrywides and your Connell sequences, if you look at independent agents, they reckon it's about 15,000 estate agents. I don't know about you, but I can't go beyond those two hands of the independent trainers out there training estate agents how to do their. I'm not talking about bosses here. Well, I mean, there's even less for bosses, coaching and things like that. There's not many, are there?
If you compare it to, let's say, Australia, where in reality every single real estate broker, whether they're in the employed model or self-employed model, they tend to have a mentor or a coach that'll work with them on a day-to-day basis around all sorts of things, whether that be leadership or the actual hardcore skills. So we are clearly underutilised, but the problem is we don't have enough money, and the reason we don't have enough money to pay for the right coaching is because we don't charge the right fees.
But something has to come first. There's probably, I can count on one hand the number of coaches that I would, if someone had like 4 or 5 branches and wanted to be coached, you'd be one. Yep. And I could name, John Paul and John Cottrell and a couple of others. But after that, I wouldn't know who to go to.
Look, I think there are other names. Stephen Brown would be one that I would.
Okay, but then you see your staff. So I'd get your Stephen Browns in this world and Amandas, but there's not many, is there, to go around?
I think there could be more if there was if the market grew for it. But in answer to your question, is it fees first or is it training first? Well, the answer is it depends where your business is right now, doesn't it? It depends where you are. Are you starting up, or are you a business that's perhaps hit a bit of a brick wall in your growth? Are you a business that's doing okay but struggles with staff turnover? Because the solution for each individual business would be very, very different.
But does it normally come down to the boss of the firm, the leader? And whether they're leading or managing or just being
not so much the boss, because a lot of certainly my personal clients, the boss is strategically very sound. But
hold on a second, they're switched on enough to get you involved. I'm talking about the thousands out there that are not getting you involved.
If you're talking about a small independent business that, let's say, turns over sub £500,000 per annum. Depending on
which
how
is the vast majority of estate
agency. which we could double, by the way, if we just all agreed that we're charged properly. The £500,000, the stupidity of this is if we all collaborated and just pushed our fees and our value up in the traditional main model, then that 500,000 would become 1 million without selling a single extra property. But because we choose to fight each other and have FOMO over every single listing, we actually drive the fees down and are continuing to do so, I think. The only thing that's rescued our industry over the last 20 years is house prices rising. Had we not seen the ridiculous house price rises we've seen, but we had seen the degradation on the fee in percentage terms, we wouldn't have an industry. There wouldn't be one. So what happens when prices go in reverse? We're just not equipped to deal with it at the moment.
And transactions will go down as well, because that's what tends to happen.
Yes, although I think we're set fair for a couple of years now in terms of transactional volumes. But of course, at some point, if you've got a larger number of people transacting, which we've had over the last couple of years, the fact is there'll be a dip somewhere, because over any 5 to 6 year period, the number always adds up to the same. So at some point, we're going to have a bit of a drop off in sales volume, and of course, that's going to hit some people very hard.
But come on, answer the question.
Okay, so in terms of how can a small business, the first thing they've got to decide is, do they want to grow? If the business they have is giving them the lifestyle they want, the happiness they want, and they're enjoying it, all of which are very happy, they're all important. It's not just about money or turnover. Not everybody wants a multi-million-pound business. If you're happy with it, touch and do nothing. If it's providing your family with a lifestyle and you enjoy it and you come to work with a spring in your step and you really enjoy a estate agency and being a business owner, then you don't have to change anything. But if you feel unfulfilled or you're miffed that your staff won't do what you want and you feel that there's a path that you want to go down that you just can't go down, you need to do one of three things: get assistance, get help, get somebody from outside that can look at your business and give you some pretty tough love about what you need to do to go the other end, but take the advice. No point in paying for it if you're going to ignore it. 2, document very, very clearly what you want to do and be very honest about what the barriers are, because they may be you. The barriers may be you. For example, your staff, or your team, sorry, I hate the word staff. Your team are coming back with instructions, but at very low fees. And you're agitated by it, but you're also agitated if they lose one. You say, why didn't you drop the fee? You can't have both strategies. You've either, right, this is our fee level, we're not going below it, doesn't matter what, we can lose a few, but we'll gain a few. I've very rarely seen a business argument that suggests that low fees ever creates a better profitable business, because there is no correlation between the low fee agent and their conversion being higher. Typically, every time I've measured it, the lower the fee that they're prepared to charge, the percentage that they convert from valuations to instructions is always lower than the guy that charges more. So, because a good valuer will charge and has the story and the content and the substance to convert the listing, the fee is not what the consumer wants in 4 out of 5 cases. Peter Knight's data shows that.
Okay, so it starts from the top. You need some guidance and support. It comes down to processes and the people and making people accountable. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, and have a very clear process that you stick to. Once you've got your culture in place, the only thing I would add to that, Chris, is I think you need to have a very clear strategy for each of your individual properties. Because how do you differentiate if you don't have a clear marketing strategy for each individual property?
Okay, let's bring it back to the market itself. Estate agency is very confrontational in the fact that you only employ a seller's estate agent, whilst if you go to America or Australia, you have buyer's agents as well, and you have MLS, which is multiple listings. Do you think either of those could help bring more collaboration and ultimately drive fees up in the industry? MLS,
definitely. Whether we've got the maturity within our current industry to have that. But if you imagine that every listing that comes into the market...
Yeah, because I was about to say, someone watching this might not know what MLS is.
Multi-listing. So basically that's where, if a property comes into the market, any agent can have access to it and get their share of the fee. So it's in no one's interest in an MLS-based market, but States and North, I think Canada would be MLS as well, and parts of Australia. It's in no one's interest to drive the fee down, because no matter who wins the instruction, everyone has an opportunity to get the... So instead of trying to do this, everybody is saying, right, let's list everything properly, let's charge appropriately, and you can either bring your buyers or your sellers, we can all share the cake. The objective of the American realtors, for the want of a better word, is to increase the value of the market for themselves as an industry. As a result, they're regulated properly. They've got really high standards. They're still a little bit, because they're estate agents, they're still a little bit maybe not public, popular industry number one, but they're definitely not as looked down upon as we are here in the UK, because they genuinely do make a difference. I mean, they can spend 20,000 on a launch party for a property. Now, I know we're a million miles away from that sort of thing in average 3-bedroom semi-land, but so MLS, I think, would by default create a sort of more cooperative approach towards the listing, and the self-employed route really lends itself to that, because you could either be a lister or a broker. You don't have to win because you're saying you've got to win every single instruction. Well, actually, you don't. If we were in an MLS system, this guy could win the listing, but you could be the guy that sold it. On the flip of that, you asked about buyer agencies.
Well, that kind of rolls into MLS because you work for the buyer
on the other side, yeah.
But you also earn money from that. Do you think there's an opportunity for people to become buyers agents?
Well, as you say, I think MLS and buyer agency go hand in hand. So I'm an example of that. I know we were talking about a transaction recently where somebody we both know...
This is a friend of yours, yep.
Yep. No, it's me, actually. So let's be honest about it. It's my sale. So, my house, you won't see it anywhere in the marketplace. It's never appeared for sale. It doesn't show as sold, but it has been sold. I had several buyers come round from a local estate agency who knew how to use off-market and skillful introduction. So they basically introduced my house to a number of people who wanted to move but couldn't because they couldn't find. I ended up getting £200,000 over the price that I was expecting to get. I've subsequently bought a property that at the time I bought it was not on the market. In that instance, it has gone on as sold because some agents like their donuts, their pie charts. I personally didn't want my property to be put on in case it fell through. I wanted to be able to put it back on the market as a fresh listing. The agent was somebody I know very well and have been involved in their development, and therefore they followed the teachings, if you like. But they created a fee because I wasn't ready to move until November. So the agent, by showing me what he had and by showing my property to people that weren't yet quite in a position to move, created a significant...
Okay, but why don't other estate agents do this?
Well, you'd have to ask them. I mean, I think they'll tell you time. I think they don't understand that you can do it. They don't get in bed with the right suppliers that provide that sort of data. The agent I worked with actually showed me every house in my price range, even the ones that were not on the market or in their database, because they've got a database of every single house in the UK. Now, as it happens, I recognised one that I sold from brand new 25 years ago, or whenever it was built, and said, well, I definitely would be interested in living there. They wrote to all the people in that estate, mention it, and they built the story that Iain had sold these properties from new when he was XYZ. Now he's, for whatever reason, he's looking to move.
That sounds like awfully hard work, Iain.
It is hard work, but they created over £50,000 worth of fees across 3 transactions as a result of doing that. They managed to get the sale of the person who's buying mine, they managed to sell my property, and they've managed to sell me a property. I don't know how hard the average agent, if you're only turning over £500,000 a year, which is where we were talking, you don't have to do that very often. And the agents are working hard doing things that might be easy, but time-consuming. Why not do things that are time-consuming but get you a much better reward and a much deeper relationship with the client? Because, look, I'm obviously deeply entrenched in the estate agency industry, but if I was just Mr. and Mrs. whatever, I'd be loyal to this agent forever now. I wouldn't.
And I bet the fee wasn't even an issue because they found you the house you wanted.
Yes, I mean, obviously I know them, so there was an element of a...
Make rates.
Or a trade-off between services supplied versus fees. But yes, if I was Mr. and Mrs. Normal, the fee that they wanted or the fee that we agreed was not the overriding factor. It was, can you get me a good price? Can you get me a great buyer? And okay, if you can solve my purchase problem, I'll go earlier. Had they just waited for me to say, right, I'm ready to go, they'd have still got my business perhaps. But they would have got it under a very different set of circumstances and would have been competing with 2 or 3 other agents for my attention. They didn't, because they had a proactive approach to, in effect, they didn't charge me for the privilege, but they said, look, if you let us sell yours, we will do the buyer agent piece. And of course, I couldn't say no because I'd trained them to do this. But I don't think the average person will say no either if it's properly pitched.
And if the market continues as it is, which is a low stock property market, this is what estate agents need to do, is kind of, I'm going for, you don't even have to charge for it. The simple fact is you're getting a decent fee on the one you want to sell. And build chains. I mean, this is old school stuff.
And that's what I'm saying. So although it's a low stock market makes it sensible, I think it works in any marketplace. And as you say, this isn't actually new. Because I think what's really happened is all the estate agency skills that you and me are talking about now, and hopefully the listeners are thinking, okay, well, I am prepared to work hard, I am prepared to stand out from the crowd, I am prepared to be different with my offering so that I stand out and can charge a bit more and do the job properly. Actually, what we're talking about is what estate agency was pre-portals. All portals and technology has done is dumbed down the estate agency skill, because the best member of staff in virtually every estate agent in the UK is Rightmove. So if the best member of staff and the best strategy is a portal, the client can't differentiate, so fee becomes the battleground, or possibly valuation, or both. But if you've got a completely different offering and a completely different strategy on how to list, gain a price, find, and source a property for the consumer, and you can orate that properly and tell a story, then you'll win, hands down.
Okay, let's say there's Davey or Samantha watching this, young valuer, lister in their early 20s. Spend a couple of minutes on what you would be, if you sat down with them to inspire them to build these chains, what would that actually look like, so they can have some takeaway, some actions?
Oh, I think the first thing is mindset. So you have to focus on the client's purchase and their needs beyond the fee or I think most people get so focused on the fee or the instruction.
Yeah, because that's their problem is not selling theirs. Their problem is finding the next one they want to buy. And by focusing on the problem with a potential solution, which is the home chain builder, is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, what I'm saying is focus on the problem. That if you solve the client's problem, now if their problem is they are in a fixed rate mortgage and they can't move for a year because otherwise they end up paying 20 grand, but you can't solve that for them. You could explore, well, if I got you that as an additional price and also found your property, there are ways to deal with that, but it's less. But if the client's real issue is that I'd love to move, Chris, but I can't find.
Which is most people at the moment.
It's certainly a lot, because there's not a lot in the marketplace. So the consumer behaviour is to wait for the portal to identify the for sale. So they wait for the portal to show them what's for sale, and when it comes up for sale, they ring the estate agent to find out that it's already sold. So the consumer gets a bad taste of estate agency. They're only seeing a portion of what's going through Rightmove, because my house doesn't appear. My house isn't there, and I know I'm not alone. So my house is not physically in the marketplace, but what we're describing here is much more than just 1 or 2% of transactions now. Not everything's going anywhere near the portals. Some of them put them on as a sold property, but generally speaking, agents are selling stuff long before for any portal. Right now, in the current climate.
So let's come back to the young valuer. It's all about mindset. So it's about finding the next one they want to. Is it a case of just picking the phone up to all the vals that have never come on the market saying, if I could find you one?
Well, understanding, going for a deep conversation, say, look, okay, what's the barrier between you and a move? Now, depending on what that is, but let's just say, well, I'd love to, but I can't find. Then why not ask them in and say, look, let me do an immersive experience with you where I can show you what's on the market, I can show you what was on the market and came off, I can show you what's under offer and looking shaky, and I can also show you every other property. Now, you would need to work with people like, for example, our good friend Sprift. You would need to have their data. Spectre, these people have great data sets that you could work with to identify every property, whether it's for sale or not, whether it's in your database or not. Of course, if it's in your database and you know the property, you can make a connection to the owner and say, look, I've got a genuine person. If they're not in your database, then you can write to them, or you can go and put a card through their door saying, I've got a genuine buyer that will pay a little bit over the odds. Would you like to engage with me? But over time, if you keep doing